Welcome back, everyone, to Health Hangouts with Amanda. For those of you who are just joining us today, the purpose of this podcast is for us to share, spread strength, hope, and love to those of you who have been struggling with the pandemic. And I've invited a different person every interview to come and join and share their strength, hope, and love, and share what they do and how they've been navigating the challenging times for the last few months. So today we have Erik Solbakken here with us, and I was introduced to Erik. I can't remember who it was who introduced us, but that was like 4 years ago now. And Erik is a business consultant for accountants now. So it looks like he's written a book and he's done a lot of things since I last talked to him. But even Erik, when I last talked to you, you were doing quite well. So I'd love for you to just hand it over and introduce yourself, and then we'll take it away and see what you have to share with us today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. I'm very interested. Yeah, and I could tell you were a little nervous on the pre-call. You were going, okay, I'm not really sure where he's going to take this.
Oh my gosh. No, I'm just going to take a risk here.
Yeah, exactly. What is this guy? It's interesting because, I was, I think it was Damon introduced us. I think that's where we got the first connection.
I don't even remember a Damon.
So No? Well, then it's clearly not the right guy. So there you go.
Whoever it was great.
So we're going to have to go back and figure this one out. Now that's going to rack my head.
You know what? You know what it was? The guy who introduced us did a valuation for my business 5 years ago.
Oh, it was Ernest.
It was Ernest. That's right.
And Ernest was connected by Damon, and I got introduced to Ernest by Damon. So, it was like 5 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. That's what we've got.
Yeah. Ernest did a great job.
There we go. That's how it all came together. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. So anyways, where were we? Yeah. I do business consulting. Actually, believe it or not, I kind of consider myself like a recovered accountant, because I used to be an accountant and now I'm no longer one. So I've kind of recovered from that affliction.
Mm-hmm.
So
amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I could never be an accountant.
Yeah. I was
wondering how does not work that way.
I was wondering how I could either. But clearly I have. This is where we can get into a whole psychological conversation about split brain. I've got heavy metal rocker on one side, an accountant on the other, and somehow the two come together. I'm not sure how, but
I feel you there, because I got heavy metal rocker on one side and a therapist on the other.
There you go. But you see, they both have feeling. The accountant is more like, I'm an accountant, right? And then,
that's fair.
Accountant. Yeah. So, I work now exclusively with accounting firms. I've got you said I wrote a book. It's called The Accountant Success Formula: Freeing Today's Accountant from an Oppressive Business Model. That's what I do for, shall we call it, for work. But that's not necessarily what I love to do. So, like, as you can see, as I'm talking about the heavy metal, that's where the fun comes in.
Right. Yeah, you got your guitar back there. You got your speaker system here, your mic system that I was asking about earlier.
Check 1 2. That's right. It's on. So that's when I go to the announcer voice. So, but Amanda, the reason why that I really was looking forward to coming on the call was what you're doing here, and the message that you're bringing out. And because of there's a lot of people suffering right now. There's a collective consciousness of suffering that's happening on a scale that we've never seen before.
Right.
Like ever. Like the amount of fear that's out there is rampant. And it's psychological fear. Like it's psychological fear. It's this invisible thing that's going to get us. And so it's this, and I mean, you can speak to this more, but it's the pain all happens between our ears. All the suffering is happening between our ears.
Yes.
Which there, by definition, does that make it real?
Well, no, actually. I mean, ultimately, what we have what's in front of us, and then we do what we decide to do with what's in front of us.
Yeah.
And then we face whatever consequences, whether positive or otherwise, as a result of those decisions. So ultimately, in some ways, we're really entirely not in charge of what's happening around us, but we are entirely in charge of what we do with that.
But go deeper. The thought creates the suffering
Mm-hmm.
from an invisible, scary force that's out there. But is the
Yep.
thought, is the thought, is that real?
The thought itself is
Thought,
something that something we manifest from experience.
which is past.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never the present moment, is it?
No, we create it as a present moment, and then we get lost in it.
Well,
So we lose actually the moment that we're living in.
so ever, have you ever stopped and sat in a present moment?
Certainly.
Is there anything wrong in the present moment?
No, that's what we call awakening, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right? If you just, and it's not a thinking present moment, it's just a stopping and being present
Mm-hmm.
without thought, and then go, what's wrong right now?
And the only thing that could be possibly wrong is something we manifest.
But there's never anything wrong right in the now. The minute you move away from it, you start thinking. As soon as the thoughts,
exactly. That's the manifestation.
as soon as the thought starts,
Mm-hmm.
then the trouble kicks in.
Yeah. But without that, there's just presence.
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And so endeth the pain.
It's interesting because, people say that awakening is one of the easiest things and the hardest things to do all at the same time.
I would agree 100% with that.
Yeah. Have you ever gone to a silent retreat or silent meditation retreat for,
No.
they have 3 days, 7 days.
No.
And they have weeks where you don't speak at all. And it's like, it's a really easy thing to do, not to speak, but actually when people are there, they have, all kinds of meltdowns, all kinds of feelings.
Yeah.
Because it is also the hardest thing to do, is just to stay present without getting lost in our speech or in our thoughts or in our actions toward whatever goal we have.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's because the mind can't stand it when you are in the present moment, because the minute you go into the present moment, your thoughts disappear, the mind disappears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, I don't want to disappear.
It's like the ego, right? That comes in and says, I know what's best for you.
Yeah.
This is what we need to do. And when we go just like sheep, we're like, okay.
Yeah. I'm a kid of the 80s. I was like, Lego my ego. No, it's Lego my ego. Like,
yeah, right.
My ego.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I love conversations about awakening and it's a sense of, like, it's a practice that we have to engage in. Otherwise we can get lost. We can get lost on both sides. We have these people who are saying, oh, I'm such a guru and I'm so awakened, and I would suggest that person is not. Then we have people who are really stuck in the not the now of the world, but they think they are, because they're all like materialistic things and they're chasing these dreams and goals and things, and they can't just slow down. I've been that person. Well, that's for sure.
Oh, hey, I've got all those t-shirts. I've got the materialistic t-shirt. I've got the recovered alcoholic t-shirt. I've got the first marriage and kids support payments t-shirt.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I got them all. Right. But it for me, and is when I finally had enough of enough, when I get you, it's like suffering's only necessary until you realize it's no longer necessary.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then it dissolves.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not something that someone could tell me and said, well, this is how you get there. This is what you do. This is how you step through it. or that I believed someone and followed a guru and said, oh, I'm going to follow this guru and go this way, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like I didn't, you have to experience it for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing when I talk to someone and I share with them, it's just to share with them that the possibility is there. And not only is the possibility there, is that I already know that it's in every single one of us.
Mm-hmm.
You're already that without even having to do anything to get there.
Yeah.
If
You were
anything,
born with that.
Prior to
Mm-hmm.
birth, you were that. Now, not to get into any philosophical discussions in that realm, but just, it's more of a talking and just doing theoretical discussions, or it's cute. I call it mental masturbation. Like really, that's all it is, right? But until you actually experience that peace and quiet and that present moment where you're all of a sudden you're just, oh, there's nothing, and there's nothing wrong. And it's like this warmth that just kind of just starts somewhere around-ish here. And it feels fantastic because you're not thinking.
And you're completely free in that.
There's no boundaries left. You're boundless.
Mm-hmm.
And I call this solving yourself. All the problems in your life is a result of us not knowing who we are. Once you know who you are, you've solved yourself. And after that, there's no more questions.
Can you share with me, because there's a ton of people who are listening to you, and they will be listening to you and going like, what's this guy talking about? Like how how, I'm not gonna,
I would have put more explicitives in there. I would have gone, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
yeah. And but I'm not gonna necessarily listen to him. I'll hear what he says, but I'm gonna do my own thing. And and so could you talk about if it's valuable, if you think it's valuable, like how you got to this place? Because as you say, I've got all the t-shirts. I mean, it took a lot of experience to get here.
It's what I share and what I share with people when they want to talk about this. Because I don't go around preaching, because that's one thing I can't stand. I can't stand people preaching. Like you want to turn somebody off, start preaching. Start telling them that you know better. Yeah. I am on the mountaintop and I am more superior than you. Well, if the person says they're more superior and they're enlightened and you're not, then they're clearly not enlightened. They're caught in the Maya of illusion as well.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
There's no difference between you and me. There's zero. Like nothing.
I love that, because in this world we live in levels of differentiation all the time, right? I call it, there's a difference between like the game, which is the world, and we have to pay our bills and we have to go through the slog and all of that, and then we have awakening over here, which really has very little to do with that aside from our biological needs being met.
Yes.
And they're separate, but a lot of people are stuck in that, and in the hierarchy that is the game. That's how I see it.
It's attachment to form.
Mm-hmm.
The minute we attach ourselves to anything, it causes us pain and suffering. Male. My name's Erik. I'm Norwegian, but Canadian. Norwegian descent, Canadian. Mm-hmm. If I had a religion, I could throw that in there. I'm, Caucasian, blonde hair, blue eyed. Like instantly I attach myself to this. That makes this different than that. And that's instant conflict.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The minute there's a separation and a differentiation between, there's two, instantly conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There's all the different countries in the world, all the different races, all the different people. Like differences is what causes this separation. And why are there differences is because we've attached ourselves to ideas, to thoughts. So this comes back down to the thought thing. I said in the beginning, I said, well, is the fear real? It feels real at the time, but it's a thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sensation. If you actually sit and actually watch fear, like be very attentive, just be very alert. Be aware of when fear comes up. If you were incredibly aware and just watched it, you'd realize all it is a sensation. Physical, emotional, mental. It's just a sensation that happens.
Mm-hmm.
If you're completely aware and watching it, and just by being completely aware and watching it, it makes it disappear.
That's correct. It does. It's like standing on the banks of a river and being a witnesser to your own experience without being the experiencer.
Yes, where
Mm-hmm.
the observer and the observed become one.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
that comment there, like when I remember when I first heard that, I went, "What is this guy talking about? I don't know," right? Because it goes a little too deep off the deep end for most people. Instead, I just go back to fundamentals. Just for a split second, be completely still and be in the present moment. And tell me what's wrong.
you
Nothing.
can't.
There's
You
nothing.
can't. You know,
So
someone might come forward and say, you know, well, if I'm being abused, or if I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm
is the
poor,
abuse happening right in
or
the
I'm
moment of the
right,
awareness?
and it may be
Is
happening in the moment where there's awareness, and that person will have to do
is there
something
though?
to separate themselves from that.
The so what I want to get back to is this complete awareness, right? This complete awareness.
In quiet, where there's safety around.
Just awareness. It can happen
Mm-hmm.
at any point in time. Complete awareness can happen in incredible action. It can happen. You don't have to be sitting on a mountaintop in a 7-day quiet retreat to actually be completely aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
But again, you asked what happened with me, is that I got to a point where the suffering that was happening for me, I'd had enough. You get sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's happened multiple times in my life. And that's what I talk about, all these different t-shirts, right? So this t-shirt and this one, and this one, this one.
Yeah.
But recently, and especially when the COVID came around, the timing was just right, where all of a sudden it was just like, I was getting sick and tired of the thoughts going in my head. And it was there, in the grand scheme of things, the thoughts that were probably going around in my head, some people might say, well, that's minor worries, like minor worries. I've got real world worries, like I'm trying to feed my family, or I'm being abused, or those I'm in the middle of a substance abuse, and those sorts of things that I'm talking about. And I get that. I understand that because I've been there before.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally got, we'll call it the last straw, the final straws, where I was like, I'd had enough.
Yeah.
And so I just became still and listened just to the present moment. And I just stayed in the present moment. I just stayed there. And that's where I stayed. And I just, every time I could remember to stay there throughout the day, I'd wake up in the morning, remember, then go have breakfast, forget, feed my daughter. And then, oh, I'd forget. And then I go, oh, wait, present moment. I just kept coming back to it over and over again. So just kept reminding myself to come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
And pain actually became a very good indicator, because every time I started to feel pain or suffering in my head, I would go, I'm not present. that is what, shall we call it, this final straw that broke the camel's back for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I went, this is where and so I stayed here. And once you know, or once you experience that, you can't unknow it or unexperience it. So
Yes.
even throughout the day, if if there's a disturbance that happens, I actually watch it happening now, because the mind keeps going. Like, it's not all of a sudden the mind shuts off and it's just gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
No.
if I'll watch shit happen and I'll go, boy, there's a fucked up thought. Like, go watch that, where before I might have grabbed onto it and gone, that's me, right? And gotten carried away and then gone in a whole bunch of pain and suffering. Now I can watch it and go, wow, that's nuts. And then back into the present moment.
Mm-hmm. This is often what we tell, the clients that we work with is okay, so you have a feeling, you can just allow the feeling to do what it wants. It's
Yeah.
You're a witnesser to this feeling. So
right.
if the feeling wants to cry, then cry. If it wants to be angry, then be angry. And then what we find is that we don't push it away. We don't engage in drug use or try to run from it or hide from it, and it dissipates.
Yes.
A hell of a lot quicker than you think it's going to, right? And do we have this cycle where we get lost back in that? For sure. But coming back to the present moment, we recognize that we don't need it, but we are still going to have emotions that wash over us. And I would ask you if that's true for you, like as you engage in presence, because the mind is relentless. It's never going to stop. It's always going to come back and say, oh, you need to look at this shiny thing, or think about this thing, or think about how this made you angry, or whatever it was. That's my experience of how I attempt to deal with that, is let it wash over and come back to presence as best as we can, right? What's that experience for you, the emotional piece?
So first of all, when you're completely aware, very present, and you're completely aware,
Mm-hmm.
and watching, like completely aware of what's happening, what you're watching will do what you said. It'll dissolve.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the gurus have talked about, where the observer and the observed become one.
That non-duality.
But that is what happens when you see something, because your awareness is you're so present to, hey, there's a bad thought, and you just look at the thought and you stare at it long enough, it then goes, and that is the observer and the observed becoming one.
Yeah.
That's when it dissolves itself.
There's no possibility of it having power over if we witness it.
Be aware of it, just
Mm-hmm.
awareness.
Mm-hmm.
My experience is that in the beginning, when I was practicing this, I would then and one of the things you said, I want to kind of touch back on, where you said that the mind will continue to flow. There's nothing I can do to stop it. That isn't quite true. But in the beginning, when I first started doing presence, I'd have this, I'm present, I'm watching. And all of a sudden a thought would come in the back of my head and going, hey, I'm watching a thought. This is awesome. You're amazing. And I'm like, shut up. Like you go, how did that happen? Like, how did it come back in here and just start talking to me again? So there's this weird game. You start watching when you start being aware of this, you start realizing what your mind and your thoughts will be constantly trying to take control.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the beginning, it can become a little bit of a mind game until you just continually let it happen, let the mind game happen. Because as you let it happen, as you allow, so there's this phrase in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, where it says, acceptance is the key to all my problems. In one of the stories, it says, acceptance is the key to all my problems. It gets rid of all the problems. I would disagree with that. Acceptance has an underlying level of, well, I don't like this. That's my judgment, but I'll accept it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the key. The key is to allow. If you just allow it to be as it is, you allow the present moment to be it is, you allow the mind to do whatever it's going to do, you just with no resistance. So resist not evil, to quote someone. That's the key to having the mind slow down, and the thoughts do slow down. And that's one of the most wonderful things, is actually not having to think so much.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's incredibly peaceful to not listen to them chatter and right. And so, but for someone in the beginning, so let's bring it down to terra firma for a second, because this can be all good and well. And like anybody who's listening out there right now, if you're in a serious amount of emotional pain and turmoil and fear, as the collective consciousness of everyone around you is in fear. I mean, even me, when I went out to the grocery store the first time, I was looking around going, what the is going on here? Like, people are staring at me like I'm going to kill them. Like, they think I'm the bad guy. And they're like looking at me like I'm going to hurt them. And I'm going, what?
So
what?
much
And I was
fear.
like, oh, right. You think I'm carrying something that's going to hurt you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I get caught, but that collective fear, right? If you're caught up in a lot of emotional fear and anxiety, you start listening to this up in the cloud stuff, and it's like, I'm sorry, I can't understand a word these people are saying. This is just garbage, right? It becomes flittery, flowery stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just try for a split second to be still, and you get a slight taste, just a slight fragrance of what we're talking about, you won't want to go after anything else, because you'll feel a little bit of relief and then go, oh, it's here. The relief is here.
It's always been here.
It's never not been here.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's, for me, that's what I like to share. That's the real sharing in my world. Like, I have a business and I do consulting, and I was a CPA for 26 years. I play in a heavy metal band. I'm a father. I've got, married. I've got 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the message that I love to share with people, because once they get this is what I call it, solving yourself. Once you solve yourself, all your other problems disappear.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that we certainly become slaves to what our thoughts are. And
thinking is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something earlier about trying to, these are my words, but trying to stay still. And I think, like, we're so, like, I guess the word would be like acclimated to thinking and solving, and like we're thinking we're solving, and like go. That's actually the trying part, I think. Tell me what you think about this. But if we just stopped actually trying and just didn't anymore, and we were just, we just like let go of all the things that we attach to, and there's no trying. There's just a silence and a peace in that, and everything works itself out in that peace, in that freedom. You don't have to do anything. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to be. There's just isness in that. You don't have to try to even achieve that. But at the same time, people say this is the hardest thing I've ever done, and then they go to yoga, and then they go to meditation, and then they're trying not to bring the thoughts back in. But I really believe that the trying is what we do every single day in this slog of life, of this game, right?
And therein lies the paradox. Around us, everyone's doing. Are we human? And here's the corny phrase that everybody uses. Are we a human doing or a human being?
Mm-hmm.
But for myself, I've had enough call it inward exploration. For myself, if I wasn't doing enough, it all came back down to my parents. Like, I wasn't doing enough. I wasn't being good enough. So, Erik, you're a bad boy. You should know better. You should do better. So there's this little childhood trauma that sits inside me. So I've always been an A-type personality, like go, 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 go.
Mm-hmm.
Top marks on my final exam, youngest CPA in Victoria, become a partner, blah, 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 blah. Like, just always but it was always something driving me to do that because of this internal fear. It all is being fed around us, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's always doing. We have to do more. We must do more. We have to change the world. We have to save the world. We have to do this. We do. The ironic part is the doing is the problem.
Yes, it is.
The doing is the problem, and the thinking that we are doing it is the problem. Because my attachment to all these things, that it's Erik's name, his car, his designation, all these things that I attach myself to, causes me the stress and the anxiety. Everything I attach myself to mentally causes me fear, even though I think it's giving me security. I think that once I get this house, I'll be secure. Then I get the house and now I'm not secure. Now I know the next thing. And you talk to as many people as you want as they get to the next level, and you think, oh, I'll be happy when. I'll be happy around the corner. I'll be happy just next thing. I call it the next shiny red thing syndrome. My wife called it that because she saw me doing it, right? This was back in my addiction days. Like, she called it the next shiny red thing. I literally showed up one day at the house with a truck. I went and leased a new truck,
a shiny red truck.
Shiny red truck.
Yeah.
And she goes, shiny red syndrome, huh? And I went, what? And then, because of course I was in the middle of it. Right. But it's always, I'll be happy when. My life will be fulfilled when. And when never happens, because you're always living for a future date. You're looking for a future thing to happen. Mm-hmm. So and now this is where it gets a little messy. Trying to obtain enlightenment, going to yoga, doing a meditation practice is the act of trying to obtain something in the future. Yeah. Therefore, it becomes unattainable because you're here and you've put your attention on the future thing. That's when I get to here, I'll be okay. So you're always pushing the thing down there. Happiness will happen here.
Everything right here.
So you
completely miss it.
Completely miss it.
Completely miss it because you can't. You're so
there.
Like what ifs.
Right.
You're so in the future in an experience that doesn't exist.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And by the way, by the time you get to even in the present moment, as soon as you hit the present moment, it's gone. It's past. Mm-hmm. Your future will eventually be your present, which will be your past, and your past is just a thought in your head. So it's an imaginary thought. It's fictitious. It's not real, right? Mm-hmm. Anyways, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right yet, but
we could talk for hours about that.
Yeah. So, but to come down to, it's hard to, and the question that you asked, and I want to make sure we answer this one, is it's hard to try and stay present. To try and do something. You are presence. It's not something you become. You are awareness. It's not something you become. Mm-hmm. I don't have a meditation practice. People have asked me this. I had this amazing conversation with a fellow. I actually flew 2 weeks ago. I flew to Kelowna. And so that was
Mhm.
really interesting. Like everybody wearing masks and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I had this
Oh,
incredible
yeah.
conversation with the guy at the layover in Vancouver. And he asked me, well, what's your practice? Like, cause we got really deep into this. He goes, well, what's your practice? Tell me the practice. I need to know the practice. What do I do to obtain this? And what he called it enlightenment that I had. I don't call it that, but that's what he called it.
Mhm.
And I said, I don't have a practice. So do you have a meditation practice? Life is my meditative practice.
Every moment
Yeah.
in awareness is
Yes.
the practice.
That is the practice. So being present and being aware is the work.
Yeah.
Like this, I'm still doing stuff like this stuff, but that's not the work. The work is this.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because if I'm here, there's no problem. And the knowledge will come to you if you stay here. The knowledge is that which is beyond words. You will just know beyond knowledge. And that's that peace that passes all understanding. Like I'm hacking the paraphrase to hell, right? It's really bad, but it's that peace that you just can't explain. But when you're there, there's no problems.
It's the ultimate freedom. That's the way I've always described it.
Ultimate freedom.
Mhm.
And the interesting part is when I was not here, when I was, so we call it there, watching someone explain this, it actually didn't sound very attractive to me because I'm like, well, I don't want to just sit on a hilltop and just cross my legs and just not do anything. Like you're telling me not to do anything. And I want to do stuff, right?
Mhm.
That's the interesting part. Life still goes on. This presence that is this I amness
Mhm.
continues to happen. I still continue to do stuff, but I don't have to think about it. It just happens.
And isn't it true, Eric, that we can enjoy fully whether it's what we would determine a positive experience or what we would determine a not so positive experience? We can actually embrace and enjoy all of the experience in presence without problem. Isn't that true?
Because every experience is good and bad at the same time.
Mm.
It's both. Everything that happens is in duality. Therefore, it's always good and bad. There's good and bad on everything. So inside of every happiness, there's sadness. It's all there. There's no, so there, you experience it fully. And that full experience of what it is greater than happiness because it's both at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
again, that might be a little too stratospheric for anybody listening. That might be like, well, what the hell is he talking about? But it's just this complete experience of what is, that is just, it's joyful and fun. Like, do I look like I'm not doing stuff? Like, do I look like I'm not alive? Like, am I just not like, I just built my daughter a tree house. I've never built anything in my life. I went and bought my first skill saw and I went and built the tree house. And she's got this tree house and it's like, she's just loving it. I'm looking at this tree house going, how the hell did I build that? And I go, oh, right, I didn't.
and it's just there's what's the word? It's really hard to put language to what we're talking about. You know, the words don't describe it, and so we try and use all various types of languages, and it just doesn't work. And so ultimately, the translation that I'm hearing from you in my own way of understanding it is that anything goes and there are no problems.
Everything comes and goes.
Mm-hmm.
Allow it to happen with no judgment. And you can experience the fullness of life.
Mm-hmm.
To bring it down to some terra firma, though, for those who aren't picking up what I'm laying down, because for myself, it was hard because in the beginning, I was told, or I read, okay, don't judge, love your enemies, forgive your ex-wife, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Forgive. And trying to not judge and forgive everyone, it was almost like a chicken and egg. I was putting the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to forgive and not have judgment on everything was trying to force something that didn't feel right. Like it was difficult to do. Like you see people always trying to struggle to forgive or struggle to not have judgment. And I did too. Like it was so incredibly difficult. It's not difficult anymore because I don't try and do that anymore. It's something that came out of being completely present. So all these wonderful things that we talk about in words like compassion and love and non-judgmental, and those come from the silence of the now. They come from that complete presence with no thinking, no thoughts. When you're there, that's where it comes from. And then all the non-judgmental, all those things, that's part of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not trying to do anything. You're not trying to obtain. It's like the adage they say, I do nothing and leave nothing undone.
Mm-hmm.
I do nothing, yet somehow a treehouse got built in my backyard.
Yeah. And in that there's this ultimate freedom. You're
Yes.
still engaging in
Yes.
your humanness, but this humanness is that's what creates that duality that we were talking about.
Yes.
This non-duality is this understanding. You've said this before, is that we are awareness.
Yes.
We're not separate from awareness. We think we are, but
Yes.
that's the key, is when we think we are dual.
Yes. And staying in the present moment, like just doing that little exercise, just saying, okay, be present and tell me what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing. That's it. That's all you have to do, is just be there and experience that. And that will disclose to you all of the other knowledge. That will disclose to you all the things that I've been talking about, which is the non-judgmental, the joy, the peace, the expanded, the aboundness, the observer and the observed becoming one, and all these things that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. All that knowledge comes to you once you just go there.
Yeah.
It's this I am, this presence, this just being present and being I am, this awareness. It will tell you everything. That's the guru. That's the guru right there, is this I am presence.
Mm-hmm.
It's what will, if I can call it, it's what will disclose all the knowledge. And then all this other stuff we've been talking about will make sense.
Mm-hmm. So Erik, here's one for you. You know, someone comes to you and says, you don't know me. You don't know the loss of experience. You don't know the hurt that I feel. You don't know my story. You don't know this, that, and the other thing, right? Because when we share and we're like, oh, here's an opportunity for awakening and enlightenment and freedom, and we say it's as simple as being present, and that's true. You know, I've experienced that myself. But somebody always turns around and says, what do you know about me, right? And what do you know about suffering? And you know, what do you know about living on the street? You know, and so I agree that in all situations we can be in presence and have that ultimate freedom. But what would you say to someone who said that to you?
First of all, I would never argue with them. Ever. Because the amount of physical pain and suffering, the mental pain and suffering that's going on, the attachment to the story that's in their mind, which again, being careful not to call it a story, because that can then trigger even more reaction from them, is so strong. They've self-identified with this story.
Like they are the story. They are.
I am the person on the street. I am this poor person. Yeah. I have this problem. I have this disease. I have this, right? Oh yeah. Well, what are you talking about, Erik? You're a chartered accountant. You've done this and this. Oh yeah. Well, hey, I went to rehab as well. You know, I was doing Jack Daniels and cocaine, just like probably right next to you, you know, but not that that's an issue, but I do understand that. But there's always going to be someone that say, yeah, well, my story's worse. There's been, I know them more than they realize I know them. I
because
know
you are them, and
yes.
They are you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Because there's, just by virtue of the fact that I have a consciousness and you have a consciousness, therefore it is connected consciousness. And ultimately, I was born into this world. I acquired this body. I acquired this name. I acquired these thoughts. I acquired these ideas. I acquired this knowledge. I acquired all these things. But what was it that acquired this? Something you acquire, like this is my pen, but is it me? I got it. That this is my pen, and I've got it. Is it now me? No. But yet somehow when I take an apple and I go, this is an apple, it's not me, but then I'll eat it and then I'll say, it's now me. Every experience I have becomes a memory in my mind, which then becomes a thought that comes up to me later. You know, thoughts are not present. Thoughts are only the past. All thinking is of the past. It's a ghost. So all these things I've acquired over time, how can they possibly be me? There had to be something there to acquire it. Right?
Well,
do you understand what I'm saying?
In my own way, I certainly do. But you know, this begs the question of the cliched question of who am I, or what is me, right? What is me?
Yes.
You know, I'm saying I am all these things, but I'm not.
Yeah, exactly. You hit it. Who am I? This is why I call it solving yourself. What's the shared problem of every human being on the planet? Everyone has the same problem. There's only one. What is it? Who am I?
Mm.
So the person on the street says, you don't know me. You don't know. Yeah, I know you. I do. You don't know who you are. Simple, right? He doesn't know who he is.
And it's like that differentiation that I was talking about before about the game and who we are in the game, and
Yeah.
there's a no knowing of ourselves in presence, because there is no self in
Bingo.
presence.
Yes. Yes. To someone who has not experienced it, these are all just flowery words.
Yeah.
So I actually would say to that person, to come back to the answer, the person on the street, number one, complete compassion and understanding. I totally understand them. I get it. There's zero judgment. All I offer is, don't take my word for this. I don't want you to believe me nor disbelieve me.
Mm-hmm.
Do not believe me nor disbelieve me. The minute you believe me that what I'm telling you is true, or the minute you say, I don't believe what Erik's sharing with me is true, you've now closed the door to actually experiencing it, because you've now created a mental image in your mind that this is the way things are, as opposed to experiencing it and then knowing for yourself. So it's completely, I give you this, try it out. Once you experience it for yourself, you can then know whether it's true or not.
Mm-hmm.
Until then, it's all mental masturbation. it's because these people, I have faith in this and I have faith in that, and I don't believe in this and I believe in that. Well, you've now just completely shut off the opportunity to actually know.
Mm-hmm.
Once you know, you can't unknow.
This is why a lot of people say, "Oh, ignorance is bliss." This is, but at the end of that, it's always suffering.
Ignorance is suffering.
Ignorance is suffering.
Ignorance isn't bliss. Ignorance is suffering.
And
Thinking is suffering.
it makes sense for those who don't know how to plug into what you're saying here.
Mm-hmm.
When the things we're talking about, that they say, well,
Mm-hmm.
if once I know, I can't unknow. What if I don't want to know? but what we're saying, what I hear you saying, Erik, is the knowing or the unknowing of presence is all the things that will lead you to understanding compassion and love and connection, whereas the ignorance in suffering is where we get stuck in jealousy, resentment, addiction, anger, things like that.
I've got all those t-shirts.
Yeah. I have those t-shirts too.
I got them all. I've got them all.
I've got a lot of them. I don't have the paying child support t-shirt.
No, there you go. There you
go.
But hey, I'm one of. I
have a lot of t-shirts. I have a lot of t-shirts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and ultimately, this is where all problems come from, is a mistaken sense of identity. It's just a case of mistaken identity. That's all everything is. For me, I had to be sick and tired of being sick and tired to finally go, I'm going to really look at this thing that's going on here, this life, like really just be present and just watch it and just be present. And so there's abiding in the present, the I am, the thought I am. That's everyone has that, right? I am. It's universal. After that, everyone goes off on what they add to the I am. It's totally up to you. I am male. I am female. I am a heavy metal rocker. I am an accountant. I am a therapist. I am a street person. But I am is the first thought. And it's shared amongst all of us. Stay there. Just stay there. And the way to stay there is to be present. And that's what unlocks the key.
It also dissolves the I.
And then you realize you were prior to the I am. So then that dissolves as well. And you go to the absolute.
And you realize that you never needed all the thoughts that you manifested for yourself.
You were prior to I am. But the first step is to stay in the I am. And eventually you will then dissolve the I am and realize you were prior to the I am. The I am showed up at birth. And then it's going to disappear at death. So whatever you were prior to, what happens to you? At death, what happens? Nothing. What was never yours goes away. And this is where the attachment to things causes suffering. This is where thinking causes suffering, is because when we attach ourselves to thought and things and my windscreen, I love my windscreen. Or my daughter, my 7-year-old, she has a little toy. She loses the toy or it breaks, screams bloody murder. The world is over. The Barbie doll lost her arm. And as a parent, you go, it's just a fucking toy, right? But you have compassion for it because you go, no, I understand. But why did the suffering happen? Is because she attached herself. It's attachment. It's identification with something that is not you. So this in lies the basis of suffering. All suffering is as a result of identifying yourself with something that is not you. And ultimately identifying yourself with something that will not last. Because no thing lasts. I've taught my daughter, she's 7 years old. I'll ask her now, I say, Isla, what lasts forever? She goes, nothing. Bingo. Realizing that is freeing. But if you're not at the right state of having that conversation, it can seem terrifying.
But is it ever the right time for anything? People always say, "Oh, well, when I get this, or it'll be the right time to get married, or it'll be the right time for someone to pass away, or it's never, and everything ends on a moment's notice. No notice. It just ends. It's just done and gone. Everything. Right? And yet we sit here, and me too, we sit here and we're surprised. Oh my gosh, like this animal has died, or this person has died, or this friendship has ended, or whatever it is. And we go, like, how could this have happened? When really it didn't belong to us in the first place. It was a gift. All of our experience is just a gift.
Yes.
It's not ours.
No, never was. Prior to the consciousness of I am showing up, what were you? This is why I asked the question at the beginning. the fear that we're having, that people are having in their minds about COVID,
Mm-hmm.
about the world, is it real?
Fundamentally, it comes down to this fear of not knowing and this fear of death.
Is it real?
Right?
Is fear real? Fear is a sensation. Fear is a thought. Thought is past because it's not present. A thought is of the past, so therefore it's a past.
Mm.
When you're completely present, it just all dissolves.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we've been talking about, again, to bring it down to terra firma, someone's suffering right now. They're in mental anguish. They're suffering. When you're in deep, deep suffering, it's so maddening for that individual to hear someone say, well, just look at it. Because when it's happening to you, you are it.
Mm-hmm.
It takes it. It's completely enveloped you. It's. There is no differentiation between you and the fear. It's gripped you, and you are fear.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very difficult to hear someone say, just be present and watch it, when you feel like you are it. Because there's no what, look at the ethereal body that's out here, right? Like it's just, it is all you.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking an opportunity to just say, okay, be present for a split second, just for a split second of your day, try it. Here it is, just try it. Go right into the present moment, be still, and say, and ask yourself the question, what is wrong right now? And the answer doesn't come because there's nothing. That's the first taste. Stay there. Then all of the rest of the stuff we've been talking about on this call will make sense.
Mm-hmm. You know, I was going to put a challenge out there to any viewers to write a comment about, you know, what their experience is of what they're hearing, and when they sit in presence, what that experience is like for them, if they could describe it, you know, and if anybody out there does think there is an answer to what's the problem in stillness, my encouragement is to recognize the difference between the thoughts that you have and how they control and direct you, and how stillness, there's no control or direction at all. There's just isness in awareness. So for those of you who do have an answer for Erik, what's the problem in presence? Share with us. Tell us what your experience is of this. And I love the invitation that Erik puts out there to everybody, is that's the taste. That's the aroma of presence, is and freedom, is to just be with what is, whatever it is, whether it's threatening or non-threatening, whether it's in your mind's eye positive or not positive, because those are all thoughts. Those are all determinations and judgments that we've created.
When there's Zen master, when anybody would come and ask him a question, Zen master, blah, 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 blah. And he wouldn't talk. He'd always just go.
Oh. Yeah.
Every question. It's funny when you get the joke.
Because it's all jarble anyway. There's no answer.
Again, with the for those who have tasted and felt what we're talking about, the conversation can be, yeah, there's a lot of nodding, like bobblehead dolls going, yep, 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 yep. But for those who don't or have never felt this, because I was there, I'd heard this sort of conversation before, and I went, what are you guys talking about? Right? It can be a bit out there. Just give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a try. It's all it takes is just a split second in that present moment awareness to feel what we're describing, and you won't need convincing. That's why there's no again, if you have an answer to what's wrong in the now, that inadvertently the answer is the answer is not coming from the now, because when you're completely in the now, there's no answer.
Mm-hmm. There can't be an answer. There's nothing.
Well, there can be, but that's only because your thoughts come in and you're now thinking again, and thinking is in the past. So.
Mm-hmm. I love it, Erik. And when we did our pre-call, he said, oh, I can't remember how you said it, but there's something coming.
Yeah,
like,
you did, because it's funny because Erin was like, okay, you're going to be on the call. My wife, she organized it between the two of us. And she goes, okay, well, it's a chance for you to talk about your business. And then I went, yeah, no, I'm not going there. I know exactly where we're going to go here on this call. So, yeah, but you didn't know where we were going to go. So that's the fun part.
No, I didn't. And I love it. You did offer me, you said, you want me to give you a backstory or backdrop.
Yes.
And I said, no, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
And I love the engagement.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you came forward and gave us your time today, all of us.
My pleasure. A lot of fun.
Yeah. And I'm curious if there is somebody out there who is interested to talk more to you about this. Could I forward their correspondence on to you? And
all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will talk to whoever wants to talk about this, and I would share whatever I have to share with them. I would be happy to do so.
That's beautiful. And the other thing that I love that you presented today, Erik, is that, you hold the book up and you're like, this is the like what I do, but this isn't me. Like I'm not seeing here that you have this attachment to that is you, or that is what, that's, you have to do what you need to do to feed your family. We all do, but that's not identified as you.
I used to though. Like, this is the thing.
Well, with your big shiny red truck.
Oh, shiny, big shiny red, next shiny red thing. It's not like I don't collect. It's not like I don't like shiny red things. There's my beautiful, like, look at that Sur guitar. My drum set's in the garage. I play in a heavy metal band. It's all good. I still like the shiny red things, but I'm not identified with them anymore. But I used to be. Like, that's the thing, is I don't speak from any spiritual hilltop. Like, it's not going to help anybody. And then plus that shows that I'm not. Yeah, anyways, I go down a whole other rabbit hole, doesn't it?
But we can enjoy what is in front of us. And we can embrace, what we can create. And that's all within the game. And with a nice balance between awakening or awareness and the game, we have this like, and I don't know if utopia is this right word, but it's just like, it's just beauty, even in suffering.
Yes. Yes. Someone who's in suffering hears that though, and it can be a negative reaction to it because they go, well, you don't know me.
You don't know me.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't I don't go there. It's just like, look, here, try it out.
Mm-hmm.
Don't believe me or disbelieve me. Don't say I believe him. Don't say I don't believe him. Put those both aside and just check it out. Once you know the truth, you can't believe in the truth or not believe in the truth. It just is. It's knowing.
Yeah. And you'll know it when you know it. And you know, for those of you out there, if you want to show us who you are, do it. We would love to hear from you. Who you think you are, and if you have questions or want to check into what this is, do it. Please.
Solving yourself.
Yeah, I love it.
Solving yourself.
So Erik, I will pass on any correspondence for you if anybody steps up and says they'd like to talk to you more about this.
Awesome.
And you know, gratitude to Erin also, because it was through Erin that we got reconnected.
Yes.
I worked with Erin a few years ago, and she's wonderful. Like, she's just so, you know.
I agree with you. Yes, I know.
You know.
I really like this one. That's what I keep saying. I really like this.
Oh,
I do everything I can to keep this intact. So yeah.
I very much enjoyed the presence with her also. So good. So yeah, I guess we'll leave it there for today, and you just never know what might come down the line.
I've enjoyed this. Thank you.
Thank you. So have I. I'm just going to stop this and then here we go.